well. But look, we're doing part 2 of A Rock in a Hard Place. And from what I heard, Julie did really good last week. She preached up a storm. And so I'm hoping that I can tail in and add on to that tonight. And I wanted to read this passage out of Matthew. It's this passage of Jesus just kind of having a conversation with the people that were listening around. And I just want to read it to you, and then we're going to go off the basis of this scripture. So it says here in Matthew 7:24, and this is Jesus speaking. It says, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house." Ready, church? "Yet it did not fall, because it had a foundation built on the rock." And then Jesus continues the passage, says here in 26, "But anyone who hears my words is coming along to church, or maybe reading the Bible, or trying to understand what it means to follow Jesus. Anyone that hears this and doesn't put him into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand." Now, key verse here, it says in verse 27, "The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew against and beat the house, yet the house fell down with a great crash." And we're going to open up this second part of A Rock in a Hard Place with this thought of maybe 3 things we have to realize when Jesus is trying to talk to us as a church or visitors or anyone that's trying to follow him. What's he really talking about? Like, what are his words? What's he really saying? What's he trying to impart into us? And the first point I wanted to make tonight, it's called, I entitled it Realize. And I want to just highlight this part here. It says here, "Therefore anyone or everyone who hears my words, who hears what I'm saying, who hears what Jesus had left for us, put them into practice, and good things will happen." We know that in the Bible, Jesus says a lot of good things. He says a lot of things. He had a lot of parables. He had a lot of stories. And I asked God this week, just for this first part, what is something hard, rock in a hard place, that Jesus said that we should adapt? And so what are these words? And in Matthew 18:21, it's a fascinating story between one of the disciples, which are the 12 that followed Peter around. His name's Peter. And he says to Jesus, "Hey, how many times should I forgive my brother or sister or someone that sinned against me?" And Peter then says, "Up to 7 times, Jesus?" And Jesus answers, "I tell you this, not 7 times, but 77 times. So Jesus is like throwing out there real quick. He's like, "Hey, I've got some words to say. If you're going to follow what I'm going to do, I'll put a hard task, a rock in a hard place, in front of you and say, when someone does something wrong about you, when someone lets you down, when someone breaks a promise, when someone does something that hurts us, I'm not just asking you to let it go 7 times, but 77 times. Yeah. Anyone in the house here up to 76 at the moment with someone? But Jesus is like highlighting, hey, look, I just want to let you know, there's not really a record to keep here. You have to forgive those around you. And so I wanted to just start off tonight. It's a bit of a touchy subject because it's tough and people go through things. I mean, people have had stuff going on in their lives. People have stuff going on in their church. People have stuff going on in their beings, their families. And I just wanted to encourage you tonight that Jesus said, if you build your house on a rock, you build it on a good foundation. You build it somewhere where it's going to last and it's going to stand. It's going to be forever. He says when the storms come and when the things go wrong, it will stay built. And so I want to just encourage someone tonight, my first point tonight. And I know this is hard. When it comes to building a house that will stand. And I have to, understand the scripture myself. We have to release what's happened around us. We have to let go. I know so many people that have had really tough upbringings and tough stories, and the church is full of things that have gone wrong, and people have some messy lives. And most of it's our brothers and sisters or someone that's sinned against us. And Jesus says, hey, if you want to be long-standing, you want to keep your house built tall, you want to stay around, you listen to the words I say. And the words are, you must let go. And this is tough because I was like, whether that's relationships with breakdowns or it's what we just came out of, broken promises, or it's a physical or emotional damage, Jesus says, if you want to follow me, you have to forgive those around you. You have to forgive those that have let you down. You have to forgive those. And I'm reading this passage and I'm getting ready for this tonight. And I'm like, God, this is really, really hard. Like a rock in a hard place. I'm like, God, it is hard to go and find all the things where someone's ticked me off or done something wrong to me and let it go. And God's like, I know, Samuel, I know it's painful. I know it hurts. I know it can look messy. I know it sometimes looks like it can't be fixed. But if you trust in me and you build on the foundation of forgiveness, then your house will last the next storm. And this is where the rock and the hard place comes in. God, made it very clear to me tonight that forgiveness is really hard, but so is unforgiveness. Living in a place of unforgiveness is as hard as sometimes forgiveness. It's a rock and a hard place. And I know some people right now, they're in the place of unforgiveness and it's hard to let go. But I'm telling you now, even living in that place of unforgiveness is just as hard as forgiveness. You know, my son, he's my eldest son, Dallas. He's just over the last couple of years, he's just become fascinated with Lego. Like, he just thinks Lego is the greatest thing ever. And Kirsty and I's feet are thankful for the Lego in our house because he leaves it everywhere. But he's just like fascinated with Lego. And so Dallas, a couple of months ago, he started building this Lego city. And he even conned me. I don't know if anyone saw it at McDonald's. I had like a Lego McDonald's. I'm trying to expose everyone that went to McDonald's in the last. He convinced me to buy this $50 Lego McDonald's thing. And I'm like, oh, well, it's for your passion, love. I bought it. And we got this thing. Anyway, he's starting to build this Lego city. And he's putting bits everywhere. And it took him weeks. It took him days to build this big Lego city. It was beautiful. It had helicopter pads. It had rivers. It had all these streams. It was just incredible. And he was the proudest guy. He was like, Dad, Mum, going to have a conversation with you about this. We said, what? And he goes, I built a Lego city and I don't want anyone going in my Lego room. And we went, okay. All right, Dallas. And I used to peep in there and go, oh my gosh, did my son do that? I'm so proud of him. Anyway, he was proud of this thing. He spent hours on it. And a couple of weeks later, I was at home. I'm going to admit this. This is me confessing to you tonight. I was home by myself with Blaze. This is my second eldest child. And he's a lot of fun. And we were just hanging out. And I think I was doing something for a moment. And Blaze comes out of nowhere in the house and he says, Dad, I've got to show you something. And I said, well, you seem really excited about this. What are you going to show me? He said, come with me. I've got to show you something, Dad. It's really cool. So I go, all right. And I started following him. And we walked past his room. And I was like, hang on, Blaze, where are you going? He said, we're going to go to Dallas's room. And I said, hang on, Blaze, hang on. What are you showing me? He said, come on, I'll come. Blaze, you've seen Blaze do this. He's like, come on, I'll show you something. Come look it out. Anyway, I get down to Dallas's room. And Blaze jumps in the room. And he goes, ta-da! And I was like, I opened the thing. And Lego City was destroyed. There was pieces everywhere. I don't know what I think he was playing King Kong or something. He literally, he found he got the characters. I don't know if I should admit this online, but he was ripping the heads off the Lego character. He destroyed this thing. He destroyed it. And I'm like, oh no, I don't know what to do. And he's like, Dad, how awesome is that? Yeah, destroyed Lego City. Yeah. And I was like, dude, this is not something to be proud of. We are freaking out right now. I'm looking at the mess. I'm like, I can't rebuild this by the time Dallas and Kirsty get home. Anyway, Blaze thought he was proud of it, and off he went. He just went to watch TV. He didn't really care. Dallas comes home, and he goes into his room, and I just hear sobbing. He goes, Dad, someone destroyed Lego City. And he was devastated. And I said, who did this? I said, Dallas, I'm really sorry, man. I said, your mum trusted me with Blaze, and I didn't keep an eye on him. But I had a moment where I had to sit down with Dallas, and he was like, Lego City, he was sad, and it was quite a mess, wasn't it? And as soon as he went to watch TV, I got the vacuum cleaner out, getting it all. But I sat him down, and I said, Dad, how about from now on, we rebuild the Lego somewhere higher up than where Blaze can reach? He had originally built it on this platform that was really low. And I said, Dal, from now on, when you build Lego City or we build Lego pieces, we're going to put them up really high where other people can't touch it and other people can't destroy it. And so I was teaching Dallas about the rock and the sand. It's building your Lego down here is the sand, but putting it up on top of the fridge is the rock. And so I was teaching Dallas this. And the second thing I had to realize, and this is just from the experience of Dallas's Legoland and all this stuff is that we have to realize that no matter what house we are building, whether we're building in a church environment or at home or in the world, we are still building something.
Yeah, come on. Yeah.
Like life itself, the existence of life is exhausting itself. And we have to realize and sometimes take responsibility that no matter what we're doing with our lives, we have to choose one heart or another. Whether that's building it on the foundation of the rock or it's building on the sand. The passage says here, they both built houses. You got to think about this. I don't want it to be like a church message like, oh, the rest of the world ain't building something. Yeah, people are building things. People are building lives. People are building houses. But it's where you build it that stands the storms of life. Let me encourage you this on here. And I said to Dad, you got to move your Lego house. You can put it somewhere better. And this is just God's revelation tonight for me. It's like whether you believe in God or not, storms will still hit your house. Whether you believe storms exist or not, storms will still hit your life. Whether you put into words the practice of Jesus or not, storms still come. And the highlight of this message was not whether storms will come or not. The highlight was where you build your house will determine how you get through the storm or you collapse in the storm. And I want to encourage someone tonight. You might be thinking, well, I don't want to build this. I don't want to do this. This is hard. This is really hard. I want to build a life. It's hard. But the thing is, you've got to choose your hard. They both built houses. They both thought they were going to last, but only one stood the storm. See, the rock and the hard place is no matter where you build, you're still building something. It's just where you build that matters. The craziest thing God ever taught me, and this might be speaking to someone tonight. The craziest thing God ever taught me was I am not a victim to the storms. Someone needs to sink this into their heart tonight. Jesus wasn't highlighting if the storm came or not. He wasn't highlighting whether if you believe in him, the storm might go around you. He wasn't highlighting whether you come to church. He wasn't highlighting the ifs and buts of following him. He was highlighting no matter what happens, storms are coming your way. It's where you build your house that lasts the storm. And God taught me that I am not a victim when a storm hits my life, but where I build my house and the foundation that sets me up for a victory. Hard house, we are not victims to the storm. It's God setting you up for a victory through the storm. Come on, I'm preaching this. Someone needs to hear this tonight. I was encouraged to say this. God wants you to know that he's still building something great in your life, whether the storm came or not. People highlight, and this is Dallas. Dallas is like rebuilding his Lego, but I'm like, Dallas, at the end of the day, until you build it in a safe place, until you build it into a strong place, these things still happen. Next time, Blaze might find a ladder and climb on top of the fridge, and it's going to happen. And the argument isn't whether storms are going to happen in your life or not. We all know things go wrong, things happen. But it's where you build. And it's what you build on. I hope I'm highlighting here the rock and the hard place. To build a house is exhausting. To build a church is exhausting. To build your marriage is exhausting. To build your life is exhausting. But to not build it is also exhausting. And to not reach the lost is also exhausting. And to not work on your marriage is also exhausting. These are a rock and a hard place. And I'm saying to the church, I'm saying to us tonight, trust that God wants to do something great in your life tonight. Because here's an encouragement for someone that needs to hear this. You've already come this far, so don't quit now. God was really highlighting to me this concept that where you blame, you give power to. Who you blame, you give power to. And where you build, you give power to as well. But I'm believing that as hard as it is, we're not giving power to the storm. We're not giving power to who ripped us off. We're not giving power to who let us down. We're not giving power to those that did us wrong. But we stand in forgiveness and say, God, I'm going to build my house somewhere that even though the storm comes and even though the waves come and even though it rises, I stand built. Come on, someone needs to inherit that. You're like, well, I've come this far and it's tough. I want to encourage you now. God's saying, I'm still doing something in your life.
Come on, baby. It's good.
It doesn't matter how young or old you are. It doesn't matter how new you are to God or old you are. You don't have to be a 10-year veteran of following Christ. You don't have to be a 10-minute. God will build something in your life and you continue to build something in life. And even though the house crashes and even though it falls down, He will show you a new foundation. He will show you a new place. He will show you a new place to build your house. Don't give blame or the power to blame to the storm and then say, well, the storm picked on me. We're not a victim.
That's it. Come on.
But I will live in victory.
Yeah, come on.
Hard house. Storms are coming. You ain't a victim.
Yeah.
But when your house stands, there's your victory. We are not living in a place where we're like, oh, poor us. No, the church has had enough of poor us. This is a place where we go, God, you are building us on the strongest foundation. You are building us in the craziest weather. You are building us no matter what happens around me, no matter what storm comes. I stand here on my marriage, my family and church and say, God, you built me on that rock. God's still building you. If you made it this far and you're here tonight, God's still building you. Don't quit yet. Don't give up just yet. Don't give power to it. You know, too many times the church world, including myself, I've fell in this. I say, well, that's unfair. The storm hit my house. And God said, no, it wasn't about being a victim. It was so I could show you a victory. That when this happened and the waves came and the storm hit, because you built it on a foundation and a rock and a forgiveness, there you stood. And I'm believing tonight people are going to realize this. That building a house is tough. Building a house is hard. But if you build your house in the right place, and I'm maybe speaking just to some of the Christians tonight that believe in, if you build your house in the right place, in what God says, forgiveness and love and hope, then the victim story becomes a victory story. And our church, we don't want the victim story. We want the victory story. I'm believing for families in this room tonight, people in this room tonight. You have victim stories that you might be living in. I've been there. I understand that. It's like, God, why did my back give out? I'm about to go on holidays in 2 days. And God says, I'm going to show you a victory in this. Build your house on the rock. Some people tonight, you're going to have a victory story this year. You're going to have a victory moment. Your marriage is going to have a victory moment. Your life is going to have a victory moment. And you're going to say, no, don't follow God because storms don't come. No, storms hit, but I'm still standing. Which leads to my last point. The rebuild. And redemption, anyone knows that word? To be saved by grace. Redemption always has room for a rebuild. I don't want to just be someone that preaches to those building their house on the rock. I want to be someone that preaches to those that might be in the sand right now. And you've seen the house collapse. And you've seen the mess and you've seen the devastation of this world and you look at the storm that's hit your house, your family, your workplace, whatever it is, and you sit there and go, how could anyone ever work with this? Until God comes into the conversation. And He says, redemption always has a room for a rebuild. And I'm like, come on, let's get real tonight, right? We've all fallen short. Like Sam, I love the first point, forgive, but it's hard to forgive. We've all missed the mark. We've all made mistakes. We've all not made it yet. And no one is perfect. No church is perfect. No spouse is perfect. No journey is perfect. And sometimes not even every decision we make is perfect. Sometimes we might feel like we're about to make it. And we've made it in life and then we get 10 steps back and it's like, no one's made it yet. But by God's good grace, let me say this, redemption always has room for a rebuild. By God's good grace in the hard seasons and the rock and the hard place, by God's good grace, He still will use you and He still will build you even if we don't feel like it can work. And I truly believe that in the depths of my heart, that the master plan is still happening and God's work is still in effect in everyone's lives in this place online, surrounding the place of where God's speaking into people's lives. You got to build your trust again. I said to Dow, I said, come on man, let's pick up the pieces. We're going to rebuild this thing. So I came in some days and I got really frustrated because I didn't really understand what was going on. Lego's way more complicated than when I played with it. And he rebuilt the Lego city. He stood there and he was like, he was prouder than the first time he built it. He was like, look at this. We added in some extra parking spots. He'd figured out he made it better. And I saw the hope in him and the excitement in him that, you know what? Even though it was destroyed, and even though it was devastating, and even though it's a hard place to rebuild my life for God or even find him, that he is still building something in your life. Come on, there's always room for a rebuild when you accept redemption. When you say, God, I know that I've missed the mark. I know we aren't perfect. I know I missed it. I know I stuffed up. God then goes, I can rebuild on that. Come on, some young people in this room, you need to hear this tonight. You think that what you've done or your past is stopping you from God doing the master plan on your life. It don't stop God. It don't worry if you're on the sand. He'll say, get back up, I'll build you again. Marriages, families, churches, any time of breakdown, redemption is the rebuild of our lives. And I want to encourage someone tonight as the band comes, we need to say, you know what, although that our house might have been on the sand, and although we haven't always built on the rock, God says there's always room for a rebuild. And see, a rock in a hard place is really hard. We talked about broken promises last series, and now we're in this, well, God, I'm going to have to trust you again. God, I'm going to have to trust you're still doing something in my church. God, I'm going to have to trust you're still doing something in my life. God, I'm going to trust you're still doing something within me. You have to rebuild your trust when we're being hurt or let down. So I want to leave you with these 3 final points before we go into worship. And the first one is, some people online or in this house tonight, I might be speaking to you to have a conversation. You need to forgive yourself. You need to realize that God's doing something new in your life, and he's not caught up in the old you. He's excited about the new you. And so you can't build a house on a rock if you can't forgive yourself for what you had done on the sand. So I'm believing tonight, some people, you're going to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for your past. Forgive yourself for what's gone wrong. Forgive yourself for where it's missed the mark. And we've all missed the mark. We've all sinned. We've all fallen short. And something new is coming for your life. The second thing you got to do, and this is what Jesus said, you have to forgive others. Not because it was easy for people to do, but because it was hard. And building a house on the rock is a hard task. It's like you got to build something. And Jesus says, if you build on the words of mine, forgiveness and hope and love and grace and peace, then when the storm comes, because it's coming, then when the storm hits my house, when it's coming, when it hits the church, it's coming, when it hits your life, it's coming, when it hits your marriage, the storms are still coming. But when they hit, you stand there and go, but because I've built on the rock, and I've forgiven my enemies, and I've forgiven my partner, and I've forgiven those around me, then boom, all of a sudden those rising waters don't even affect you. You start to see your future as you forgive others, and you survive the storm. And the last one tonight is you have to let God forgive your past. You have to go to God and say, God, will you forgive me? Not just say, God, I'm going to get built promises. We're going to change the world. You have to go to God and say, God, I'm going to take responsibility. It's a word that we don't throw around that much in church. I'm going to take responsibility and say, God, I know that I'm not that great. And I know that I'm not that, it's a hard, people are like looking at me like it's a rock and I'm preaching to a rock and a hard place right now. You have to take responsibility and say, God, I know I'm not that good. I know that I missed the mark. I know that I haven't been perfect. I know that I'm not just wonderful. But when we take responsibility, then God says, hey, guess what? Salvation comes from responsibility, because the only way we receive salvation is to accept that we were wrong. Not going to him and saying, hey, I was right. And he goes, well, what have I got to save? It's hard because we're ego-driven and the world's all about what it looks like on Instagram and status. But God, to have a people like Hardhouse just going, God, I'm far from perfect. And he goes, whoa, I can do something with that. I can build something on that. God, will you forgive me for my past? Will you forgive me for my wrongs? Will you forgive me for what I did? Because when I take responsibility for my redemption, then he starts to rebuild my life. They're very tough. Rock and a hard place. To not forgive is hard. Just as much as forgiving those is hard. Rock and a hard place. To build a house still has to happen, whether it's on the sand or the rock. You're still building something. Rock and a hard place, but it's when the storm hits what survives. And then the hardest one is going to God and saying, you know what? I'm far from perfect myself. In fact, God, I'm nothing without you.